this is not a country that has a whole lot of experience dealing with this level of violence, dealing with cartels, things like that. As you all probably know, that's stuff that's gone on in Mexico and Colombia and other places, but has not traditionally gone on in Ecuador. Excuse me. And so, there's actually been 3 assassinations in the last, few months or so. Hello and welcome back to the Ecuador Insider Podcast. Jesse, Carl, our third partner, is still traveling. Should be back in a couple of weeks. So all the best to Brandon, enjoying his trip to the States. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to the channel. Throw a like on the video. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Any thoughts, feedback, questions, topics, or anything you would like to share, we'd love to hear from you as well in the comments. We do have our next retreat, our Vilcabamba Lifestyle Retreat, coming up on October 15th, I believe.
October 13th?
13th.
15th?
I think it's the 15th.
Okay.
Double check. It's in the, we will find a link below. This retreat is designed to give you a tangible, hands-on, first-hand experience of what life is like in and around the valley of Vilcabamba, as well as a crash course with all of the information you could possibly ever want to know. I don't think that's an exaggeration in terms of if you're thinking about making your life here, making your home here, what are all of the getting all of your questions answered, getting all of the information on visas and shipping containers and everything else you can imagine. So it's really a beautiful 9 days. It's very comfortable. There's some good relaxed downtime built in, a lot of time with us, amazing food, amazing people. They've been a lot of fun to host. So we'd love to see you down here then. If that's interesting to you, check out the link, shoot us a message, retreats@abecuador.com. We'd love to answer any questions you have. All right, so we've got to talk a little bit about politics today. We had a presidential candidate assassinated. Was that yesterday, I believe? Which this is going to come out about a week or so after I'm speaking right now. So you'll get this a little late. And I don't know, man. I don't know if we should continue with that. I feel like it dates our material a little bit. So what do you think? Put that in the comments. Should we continue with the 1 week lag, which allows us to be a little more consistent on the weekly releases, or should we go back to just a couple of days after we record it being released? But yes, we did have a political assassination here in Ecuador, so we'll chat a little bit about that. We've had absolutely spectacular weather here over the last couple of weeks. It's interesting, sort of the whole rainy season, dry season debate in Ecuador. A lot of people I've noticed who haven't spent a lot of time here everyone asks, when's the best time to visit?
Yeah.
And then a lot of people make the assumption that dry season is the time you want to visit.
Better, yeah.
And they ask us, isn't that rainy season? But a lot of people that live here prefer rainy season. Other people prefer dry season. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I liked having both seasons. I appreciate each season. The good things about the rainy season, of course, is everything's green and lush and vibrant. There's also very little wind overall during the rainy season. In the dry season, things dry out. You get beautiful blue skies, lots of sunshine, and you get wind a couple of months at least. In July, August, you have a little bit more wind. So it depends what you prefer. I like both. I think they both have their pros and cons. I look forward to the rainy season when it's dry, and look forward to the dry season when it's rainy. Kind of like we look forward to the winter to go skiing and playing hockey, and you look forward to the summer,
Right.
Back up north.
I only ever looked forward to summer, but
right. I could see that, yes.
But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like when I first got here, and also just to clarify, this is not true everywhere in the country. There are different weather patterns in different places. So obviously we're going to focus on the Southern Andes, mostly on the Vilcabamba region, Vilcabamba-Loja region. But in most places, if you get up above a certain altitude, there is no dry season. Loja, for example, does not have any actual dry season, nor does Cuenca, nor does Quito, to my knowledge, or a lot of other places that are higher elevations. In the Amazonian region, there's no dry season. There are times a year it rains a little less in these places, but there is no true dry season. And then so we're talking really in the coast the southern coast anyway has a much longer dry season. There are areas that are drier, less dry, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of nuance there. We could probably talk about those nuances for a long time. But in this region, outside of the high elevations, you're basically going to get some amount of rain between November and like the end of May. This is very approximate. It changes a little bit all the time, but generally speaking, the rains come back around November and they stop towards June. So and then it'll be dry basically from June to October, November, whenever the rains come back. And I think it's kind of just as you described. When I first got here, I really preferred rainy season to dry season because it was a little warmer. It's slightly cooler,
right?
Sort of like June, July, August are slightly cooler. I like the heat, and the tiny amount of humidity in the air doesn't bother me at all. This is not a humid area no matter what, so it's not oppressive amount of humidity at all. And I prefer but the last couple of years, the dry season has been just spectacular, where it's kind of neck and neck for me at this point, because you get so much sun.
Right.
You get sun all year, but the dry season you get a bit more, which is really nice. But yeah, you have the drawback of some windy periods over the summer. So
yeah.
It's a tough life down here with when we're complaining about 68 and semi-sunny or something. But
yeah, it is slightly warmer in the rainy season for some reason.
Yeah,
I think the heat it doesn't evaporate up in the air because the clouds are kind of keeping the heat in at night. The weather is really comfortable here all the time. I mean, like, I never feel cold here, even when it's cold. I could still be in a t-shirt outside and feel comfortable. And it gets warm enough to be in a t-shirt and shorts, but it never gets too hot to where you're like, sweating and not feeling comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, on the list of perks, the climate is up there for sure. So let's jump into some of this political stuff. So, Diego Villavicencio, what was his first name? I actually don't recall. Fernando Villavicencio. Who's a political candidate running for. So, I don't know. Do we have to give the background maybe a little bit, in case you haven't heard us talk about this before? So, Ecuador has a very interesting political history. They've had lots of political turmoil. I won't get into a whole history lesson now, but that political turmoil for the most part ended with Correa coming to power in 2006. You then had 10 years of rule of Rafael Correa. He called himself, a 21st century socialist. So he was very, very much ideologically aligned with, Venezuela and Cuba and China and to some degree Russia. And so that was, that we had 10 years of that, and that had its good and its bad, and everyone has their opinions, of course. Then since then, we've had sort of a more centrist, rule, I would say, since 2016. And then the current president, Guillermo Lasso, who was elected in 2020, did what's called the death cross, where he dissolved Congress. And he then had sort of dictatorial powers for 6 months, and then there would be national elections or I guess the elections came even earlier, but he would be in office for 6 months, and then prior to that, which is now next weekend, or probably the weekend this comes out actually, he would be in charge without any Congress at all, and then there would be elections for everybody. So new president, new Congress, and so that's where we're at now, into those elections. I don't even know how many candidates. I don't pay a ton of attention to this stuff, so I'm just telling you what I know. I don't know how many candidates there are.
I think there's 7 or 8.
Is that all? I
There were
thought it
8.
was more, but
Yeah.
it could be 7 or 8. It could be a bit more. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of candidates. And there's really, 3, or there was, Villavicencio was one of them. There was at least 3 that were considered sort of front runners, which is the lady whose name I forget, who's 35, Alianza País, the Rafael Correa party. She's I don't know if she would actually be the favorite. I mean, she's certainly going to win the first round. Probably not by enough margin to take office, but she would definitely win the first round because Correa has a very, very loyal base, and they have staunch supporters who will only vote for Alianza País. And then the rest of the votes are distributed amongst a whole bunch of candidates. And very likely there'll be a second round, segunda vuelta, where they don't meet the requirements to win the first round, which I forget if it's 35 or 40%.
40%.
Is it 40?
I thought so.
Yeah, I thought it was 35. It might be 40,
yeah,
but whatever it is, 35 or 40%. One candidate would have to hit that in the first round for there not to be a second round. So that, by all political analysts, seems pretty unlikely. There will likely be a second round, and then it'll be a very close election, kind of regardless of who the other person is outside of the Alianza País candidate. And so that's kind of the history. And so Fernando Villavicencio was running. He was an activist. He was somebody who was really pointing out corruption and really was strongly against the cartels. And so his main platform was really security. Okay, was really security and stomping out the cartels. That was, that's really what he was running on. He would be a little bit more to the right than to the left politically, and so there's, a lot of people supported him. I was reading this morning that he was kind of tied for second, basically, with Yaku Perez, who's sort of what's considered the indigenous party's candidate. And so he had a chance. He had a good shot, to be the next president. And he was coming out of, something, I don't remember what, yesterday. There's video of it. You can watch it. And he was assassinated. So this is different, right? Ecuador is not used to this. This is not a country that has a whole lot of experience dealing with this level of violence, dealing with cartels, things like that. As you all probably know, that's stuff that's gone on in Mexico and Colombia and other places, but has not traditionally gone on in Ecuador. Excuse me. And so, there's actually been 3 assassinations in the last, few months or so. I believe it was the mayor of Puerto Lopez, and then more recently the mayor of Manta, and now we have a presidential candidate, and the reaction has been interesting. So a lot of people, everybody, I would argue, or close to everybody, believes that this was a cartel. That this was the cartel, or a cartel, does not want this candidate being president because of his platform of being, that being sort of what he's running on is opposition to the cartels. And then, of course, there's lots of theories which are pretty widespread, and a lot of belief in the idea that under Alianza País, under Correa's party, the cartels were allowed to get some amount of foothold into Ecuador, and then the current president, Guillermo Lasso, was not cooperating in that way, and so that's why we've seen sort of an increase in cartel-related violence, and then the political wishes of the cartel would be that Alianza País, Correa's party, comes back into power, and Villavicencio being a threat to that and a threat to them. So I think this is a pretty common theory at this point. It's something that a lot of people here believe. I think you and I don't have any way to really know any of this. This is somewhat speculation for sure. Hey guys, quick addendum to the video you're watching. Excuse me, we recorded this yesterday, had a slight technical error, gave us a chance to record this, which I'm happy about, because as soon as the video ended yesterday, it occurred to me and kind of hit me that I didn't give the event, the tragedy, the event, the proper sort of reverence. There has been loss of life here, and it's been deeply impactful, deeply felt by the Ecuadorian people, and that's been very obvious. Again, it's such a human culture, and people care about people, and it's been clear to me how impactful this has been, to the country as a whole. And so I just wanted to, express my condolences, my thoughts and prayers to the family, and just add that to the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, indeed, a tragedy. We've spoken to a lot of our coworkers, employees, friends in the Ecuadorian population, and people are devastated, for real. This is something that the Ecuadorian people are not used to. This not really ever happened. So President Lasso called for 3 days of national mourning for the tragedy, and also declared a state of emergency. So there will be more military deployed throughout the country, mostly around major cities, to try to put an end and arrest some of the people behind this. One of the suspect was apprehended and died of his wounds in custody. There's another 6 people that were arrested as well, and allegedly most of them were Colombian, which is also interesting to note. Mr. Fernando Villavicencio was known as an activist against corruption and organized crime. So he posed a threat to a lot of international criminal organizations, and most people believe that a cartel, some type of criminal gang were behind the attack. He had received threats from them about a week before, so yeah, that's basically what's going on. So indeed a tragedy. Our thoughts and prayers for the family, and we'll continue with the episode now.
And so, here we are, and we'll see, we'll kind of see what happens. Yeah, and I have some thoughts on well, I think it's interesting to sort of, in that context, to take stock, because I think you could hear that and say, like, whoa, holy bleeping, everything, right? Like, that sounds nuts, and I'm not gonna go to a country that stuff's going on. And maybe that's understandable from a certain perspective. Like, this place is not for everybody, but the way for me anyway that I look at a lot of those things is that I think the whole world right now is dealing with pretty significant turmoil.
Yep.
In one form or another. Whether it's war in Europe, or whether it's the craziness that's going on in the States and Canada and Western Europe as well. And all of it, right? And so there's you're kind of dealing with that sort of anywhere you are, at this point. And I think Ecuador is kind of no different in that way. It just looks a little different in terms of the way that the headlines, or the way that plays out. The other thing that I always come back to, living here for a long time at this point, is that I really just trust the people here. And people here have a great deal of power. So, the Ecuadorians are very not happy with the fact that there's now violence in their country from cartels that they've never had to deal with in this way before.
Yeah.
And so I actually, from what I've seen over the last 10 years, like, I actually expect the way this will end, quote unquote. I mean, it never ends, right? It's everything's an ongoing saga, but the way that this sort of situation tapers down and kind of ends is that I think people will put a stop to it somehow, whether that's electing a president who does it, or whether that's just through sort of getting organized and through some sort of actions in that way. They put a stop to it. We've already seen some of that, right? There's been some stuff that's gone on, sort of like vigilante justice kind of stuff that we've read about. None of that's around here, of course, because this is a very safe, kind of off the beaten path area. But on the coast, in Guayaquil, even Cuenca, Quito, some of those other places, we've seen some stuff like that going on. And so, Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's kind of more theater than anything else, but it also, it also affects our lives and our businesses and all those kinds of things. And so it's an interesting time here.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens for sure. Yeah, I think the many things I'd like to comment on. First of all, Vilcabamba itself, we really don't see a lot of that here at all. I mean, I've been here for 12 years. I have not seen cocaine or like hard drugs like around. I mean, it's not something that's spoken of or anything like that. And we don't hang out in these circles, but still, if you go to big cities.
What if I'm doing coke on Saturday nights and I just don't tell? No.
Yeah. So like it's off the beaten path. There's very little crime here. The cartels are not really here to any large capacity, if anything, right? There might be a few people that consume drugs here but it's a minority for sure. It's not a common thing in the culture. I would say Ecuadorians like their alcohol, right? They like to drink beer, which is legal, but that has nothing to do with drugs and cartels, right? Other thing to say as well is the fact that I'm of the belief that there is corruption everywhere in the world, in every single country at this point, right? It's just in the Western world, it's at very high level. They hide it very well. It's kind of underground, and most people are not aware or they don't see it. Here, it's just a little bit more out in the open, right?
Yep.
And the reason why I'm saying this is that the theory is, and I think the theory makes a lot of sense, really, is that when Rafael Correa and his government were in power, they were, they let the cartels operate their business without. They basically probably had some type of agreements, and this might not be true at all, but that's what sort of the theory is. They let them operate their business. They let them export drugs out of Ecuador, and there was very little violence and crime because the cartels could run and do whatever they needed to do without the government trying to like take them down, right? And once Guillermo Lasso was elected, his government, some of their policies were like, we're going to stop crime, we're going to take down the cartels, we're going to get these guys in jail and whatnot. And so all of a sudden now there's more conflict because the cartels cannot operate freely. So I'm not saying this to say it would be better that Rafael Correa came back for that reason, but it does explain sort of the situation that we're in. Plus, the economy worldwide with COVID and things like this has created probably more of a need for some people to be involved with crime because they don't have other opportunities potentially. And I'm not just saying Ecuador, like that. It seems to be there's been an insurgence or an increase of crime worldwide, correct? So there's that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think at the end of the day, I still choose to live here because this is a very safe place for me and my family out here in Vilcabamba. I wouldn't live in Guayaquil. I wouldn't live in Esmeraldas or Machala or these big cities, these big coastal cities, right? But yeah, I think we'll see what happens. I don't know what the other candidates are saying about crime, like Yacu Perez. I haven't seen.
No, he's kind of like an environmentalist.
Right.
There's this guy who they call Rambo.
Okay.
What's his name? Shoot, I'm forgetting his name, but he's like a U.S. trained like military guy who's just like, you gotta shoot him. You gotta just shoot him.
Okay. And he's like a conservative. Sort of
I think so. I think he's politically conservative. So
Interesting.
We'll see what happens.
Because you would think this guy would also be in danger, right? If he speaks openly and freely.
Potentially. I mean, again, it's kind of a new phenomenon. But
because the gentleman who was assassinated yesterday, he did receive threats directly from some criminal organization.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, that came out. Yeah. I think he said it publicly that he received some type of threats or whatever, and then it happened, a few days later. So.
Yeah.
They don't play around.
No. So yeah, I mean, so anyways, we wanted to give that update, and I think it's important to balance that out a little because this is like news, right? It's kind of something that is interesting to talk about and doesn't affect our lives necessarily a whole lot, but is interesting to talk about. But it's like it needs to be talked about because these are the things that make international headlines and international news, and so it's on people's minds. And so it's important to address and give our opinion and give our perspective and our thoughts. But I think also it's good to balance that out a bit also with like, why are we here? Like, what do our lives look like here, right? And, I just continue to be struck by folks coming to town who just kind of get into the valley and just go like, ah, like I found it,
Right.
And the lifestyle here, like, I think it's really easy to read the headlines internationally. You're kind of trying to get a feel for the place online. You do what you can. You watch some YouTube videos, and your mentality or your mindset, of course, is kind of shaped where you come from. And I think there's just a lot of potentially false. We all had it. Like, I had it big time when I came here, but sort of beliefs or ideas or things you're worried about that just don't exist here, right? Like, at the end of the day, what is this place? Like, it's a very slow paced, relaxed, friendly, kind community and culture with nature everywhere. It's a community that's pretty tight knit in many ways. Everybody here really has each other's back in a real way. People show up, for one another. It's a group of people who have kind of come for similar-ish reasons, right? Like not that their beliefs are similar necessarily at all. That I'm talking about the expats, of course, that live here, but people are looking often for a life and a lifestyle that allows them a great deal of freedom, that allows them to enjoy nature, to kind of slow down a bit in that way. A lot of people are into growing their own food and enjoying the hikes and the rivers and that, all that kind of stuff. And this place is just very conducive to that. It feels good here. The energy's great. It's hard to kind of, it's a place that's very conducive to well-being, right? In that kind of way. And the community, that's kind of what it is. I had this morning, I had to run out to Guatuche, which is about 17 to 20 minutes away, and drop off some glass. There was a guy from Loja who had been storing some glass for me. He brought it out to deliver, and I took my wife along for the ride, and he dropped the glass, and then I helped him move it, and then we took a dip in the river, and
Nice.
And did that, and she did it nude because there's nobody there, and then I waited 20 minutes for my boxers to dry, which was a mistake. But it's like those kinds of opportunities are just so readily available.
Yep.
And it's a place where you can really be human. Like, you can actually do, like, what do you want to wake up in the morning and actually do with your time? It's a place that's kind of conducive to creating a lifestyle where you can do that.
For sure.
Because you don't have to be in the rat race here.
Yeah, for sure. And we work hard, and sometimes I think I work a little too much. I wish I had a more balanced lifestyle at this point in time in my life, but definitely it is the place where you can definitely do that. Being retired and living down here, like that
That'd be sweet.
That'd be sweet. Where you can, because you can literally go to a different good restaurant every single day, every meal of the day, right? Yeah. There's so many beautiful things to do, like you mentioned. Some people have gotten to the habit of hiking Mandango every day, right? Every morning. That'll get you in really good shape, really healthy, right? There's beautiful rivers, the water's clean. You can drink from the river in a lot of places. Most rivers come from Podocarpus, so it's clean spring water that comes from a national forest that's protected. So you can go swim in the water and even drink the water. It's pretty amazing. I don't think there's that many places like this, when I drive people around, I tell them that, they're like, oh wow, like where I'm from, we had a nice river, but we can't really drink from it, right? It's usually contaminated to some extent. And right, the water's pure, the air is extremely pure. There's no industries here, contamination. There's a few diesel pickup trucks, but that's about it, basically. So, and then the food is pretty clean overall. Everything that's grown locally, most things that are grown locally are grown organically. Some things, of course, there are pesticides here, right? Some people will think that everything's organic here. I would say that's not
not
true.
At all. No.
But things that are grown locally that don't require pesticides, like a lot of the fruits and vegetables.
All the citrus for sure.
The avocados are typically organic. The bananas, the root vegetables, yuca and stuff like that.
A lot of that's organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I and it was something I wanted to say a second ago when you were talking, but it's slipping my mind. Let me see if it comes back to me. But yeah, I think I think for me, like you know, oh right, I do remember. So there's something about there's something about just how relaxed the Ecuadorian culture is
Mm-hmm.
that makes, for me, and I'm just speaking for me, like I think there's people that might hate this, right?
Right.
But for me, it makes my life so much more enjoyable because no one ever shouts at me. I don't ever shout at anyone.
Right.
There's no one's ever rude to me. I don't have to worry about if I'm 5 minutes late. Nobody cares. Um, I don't have to worry about 10,000 rules that everybody is really into. You know, nobody's uptight. Like, you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, did I say something wrong? Did I offend this person? Like all these kinds of things. Like, nobody cares. Everybody's cool with each other. Like, everybody,
Yeah.
like, it's very much like you live and let live. It's not, and that's filters through all aspects of life here, right? Like, I'm coming back this morning from Guatuche, and as you know, they're paving that road.
Mm-hmm.
So they're out working on the road, and they're building the drainage stuff on the side, and they've got these big rock piles in the road. And I come out, and there's nobody stopping traffic or telling you when to go. They're just working on the road. They're just guys working on the road. They don't have 87 protocols and rules. They're just working on the road.
Right.
So I pull up, and the rock pile's pretty far kind of into where I need to drive, and there's actually a dump truck in front of me who stops, and then there's a pickup truck parked over here. So for a minute I thought, oh, they're waiting. So I wait for a minute, and then I realize, you know what? I think that pickup truck is actually part of the government, and I think this dump truck is probably just waiting to dump some rocks. So I kind of pull around to take a look, and I see, like, all right, they got a little bobcat who's picking up the rocks and doing stuff, and I see, like, all right, I think I can get through. I'm gonna have to kind of bump over these big rocks, but I'm in a pickup truck, so it should be okay. It's tight. My wife, of course, is like, wow, you're gonna do that, but and the guys just kind of look at me, and I think one or two of them was like, like that kind of, you got it, like, and I drive by, and we drive home, and it's just the difference between that and what that would look like back home. There'd be notices, and it would be like, the road is closed from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. on these days, and they'd have all the guys out there closing the signs, and no, and you can't, and imagine if you actually tried to get by, they'd be calling the police, and people, it'd be like a whole, and that's just an example, but everything is like that here. So you can really, like, you really can do that, not only in the community and because of the nature and all that stuff, but just this culture in general, allows for that.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story when they had the Fiestas de San Pedro, maybe a month back. We went and parked in town. We went, the celebrities, they were having celebrations. They were having fireworks, and it was really fun. But I parked my truck on this one-way street that's like a steep, like at the below San Pedro is like this one way that goes up.
Yep.
So I parked over there. So of course other cars parked behind me. There's cars on both sides of the road, and other cars are parking back down in the other street below. So it was super tight. It was impossible for me to back out and leave at that point. There were too many vehicles and stuff. And then there was a car in front of me, I think, and he's like, he had to go also, and I had to move out of his way so he can get out. Anyways, it was this whole thing where he's like, oh, you got it, yeah, it's fine. So I get down there, and it's literally impossible, almost impossible. But you got a couple guys that are coming out, and they're helping me, and they're hitting the wood. And then I think I did like a 30-point turn, slowly, eventually made it out, and then everyone was able to get out. But anyways, it just felt like a community event. Everyone's helping me to get out of there so they can move, and I don't know. it was a cool experience, and nobody was pissed, nobody was frustrated, and it's like, I don't know, nobody's ever put a dent in my car. Has that ever happened to you? Like someone could, basically hit your car in a lot of cases, because a lot of times people are parked anywhere on the street. It's not like a proper parking lot with surveillance cameras and security guards, right?
Right.
So, anyways,
Yeah.
things are very organic. It just feels it happens organically.
Right.
And things usually don't go wrong. Like, it's surprisingly how few things actually go wrong.
Yeah. It's in many ways, it's a great testament to human nature, because
Right.
there aren't as many of the rules and the protocols and the expectations, and it all just kind of works. And people really look out for one another. Like, that story that you just told, like, people here are genuinely helpful all the time.
Yeah, it's true. Very true.
If you need something from somebody, they will help you. I've had some remarkable experiences here with stuff like that, where there was a mechanic once who was going home for the day. It's like 6 o'clock. And he had a burnt arm. He had just, a radiator had exploded or something.
Wow.
And he had a severely burned arm that he had like wrapped in plastic. But it was like 6 p.m. and I had an emergency. This was in Saraguro, and I needed to go to Guayaquil to pick up my daughter, who was traveling as an unaccompanied minor. And I'm broken down, like I'm not gonna make it, and she's gonna be standing at the airport with no one to pick her up at 8 years old or something. And so I'm talking, I'm getting some help. I may have told this years ago, but my daughter's 15 now. I'm getting some help from, anyways, it's kind of a whole confluence. Well, it's actually interesting because it speaks to how everything works here. So I don't know anyone in Saraguro, so I'm like, what do I do, So I call the one guy I know who has contacts, is kind of from Saraguro, and I tell him my situation, and I'm like, do you have someone here that you could put me in touch with who could help me? He's like, let me call you right back. Calls me back, gives me a guy's number. I don't know this guy from a hole in the wall, right? I call this guy, I explain the situation. In 5 minutes, this friend of it's not even a friend, it's a friend of an acquaintance, right? A friend of an acquaintance is down there. He probably showed up around 5 o'clock. It's probably about 6 when we were dealing with the mechanic. The mechanic and this guy were with me until I left at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And the guy's out there doing MacGyver level, stuff to get this little stupid thing that had gone wrong fixed, because really we needed a part from Loja, which would be there the next day.
Right, that's impossible.
And I'm screwed, and I was gonna have to, hire a taxi and pay like several $100 to go get him and leave the car, and we're supposed to go to the beach after. And it was like, but these guys were, the guy sacrificed his entire night. He never even said like, oh, this is gonna cost you, or here's how much it's. When it was done, and I asked him what I owe. You know what he told me? It's like, give me whatever you think makes sense.
They do that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I gave him some money, and I gave the other guy some money who in a real way tried to turn it down.
Yeah.
He's there from 5-6 p.m. till, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning or something, helping. He's not even a mechanic, but everyone here is a mechanic, right?
Yeah.
And he's helping, and he didn't want the money. He did not want the money. It was amazing, and this kind of stuff is just normal here. Like,
it is very normal. I've had many instances like that as well. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And coming from Canada, US, we feel like you need to pay a lot of money for someone who did something, went out of their way, right, to help you with something. Whereas they don't see it like that at all. They're just helping. Yeah. I've had people. Another example of this is, if you have someone fix something that was really simple to fix, sometimes they won't charge you anything.
Charge you, yeah.
They'll be like, it's okay, that was easy. Like, it took 10 minutes. Like, you don't need to pay me for that. It was so little, right? Whereas, normally you'd have someone, they'd have to drive to your house and fix something. They want to charge you for their time. I've had a few times where they're like, it's okay. So
yeah. Yeah, a lot of doctors don't charge you for the follow-up.
Right.
Like, they charge you, $30, $40, whatever it is, for the initial appointment, But then if they're sending you for tests and stuff, the follow-up's free.
It's free, right? It's included. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got anything else we want to cover today?
I think that's pretty good.
Okay. Guys, thank you so much for tuning. We didn't even have a topic today. I think it came off pretty well. What do you think? No, maybe not. All right. Well, we tried. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate it. Again, we'd love to hear from you. If you've got topics that you'd like us to cover, please put them in the comments. We'd love to have a like on the video if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see you down here in October for our Vilcabamba Lifestyle Retreat. I promise you will not regret it. I don't think there's been a single participant so far that has said anything other than it wildly exceeded my expectations. So it is really fun. We'd love to see you down here then.
And until then,
see you next time.